Welcome to the Channe Show, hosted by yours truly, Kavita Channe. Today we're joined by Miami Heat's broadcaster and courtside reporter, Jason Jackson, to talk the state of the NBA and much more. Jax, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I'm so excited to have you. I know you've been very busy doing many appearances everywhere via Zoom and FaceTime and Instagram Live. So thank you.
Hey, listen, this reminds me of almost 7 years ago when somebody was on another show with the person's name on it, right? I believe it was called The Jack Show.
That's right.
And somebody would show up on fall Friday afternoons to get us all ready for high school football tussles around the Tri-County area. This is a turnabout of many, many things.
That's so awesome. Good. You remember that. I'm so excited.
Come on. The Kavita report on The Jack Show.
Given the current state of the NBA, what's happening behind the scenes with the players and the team?
As you know, play is suspended. And right now we're probably, as we tape this, still another 3 weeks away from the commissioner and the board of governors, which is made up of the team owners, making a decision on this season. So our season isn't gone yet. And between you and I and everybody else that can do math, it's far more lucrative to play the games. So there is a really intense negotiation going on right now, because if games are canceled, the players have to give some of the money back to the owners. The way that the finances are set up, just a brief little collective bargaining agreement understanding for your viewers, is that the players and owners share all basketball-related income. 51% of it goes towards player salaries. About 10% goes into escrow anyway, just in case there's a slide in the revenue that one side or the other had a faulty calculation. But there's also this little tiny clause. It's in the really, really tiny lettering at the bottom of the player contracts. They have to give back 1% of their salary for every game that's canceled. So words mean something here. Our games are suspended, so a lot of guys get paid through May 1st. If you do the calculation as we're taping right now, there's 2 more checks left. There's some guys that get paid 24 paychecks, like the majority of the world, but most of them get paid from regular season beginning to regular season end. And if games are canceled, they're going to give back 1% of their check. I'm not going to say who makes the most money in the NBA, but I'm pretty sure his name's LeBron James. And so with that being said, I hate talking about people's money, but he would lose upwards of $400,000, considering that there are about 15 to 18 games remaining for most teams. And so that would be the high end. And while he makes a great deal of money, well above $30 million a year, I don't know anyone with millions or billions that can look at nearly $500,000 and go, yeah, whatever. And so with that being said, there's a really intense behind the scenes, non-public union and labor committee negotiation that's going on right now that is going to impact what has become a really nice management labor relationship that took a really long time to change, because for about 25 years it was not this way. But that harmony is going to be tested right now. So listen, we've got to be smart. We've got to be separate. We've got to protect one another. We've got to protect ourselves. But there is a $5 billion business we're talking about. The NFL is a $14 billion business we're talking about. Baseball is somewhere just below the NBA, and it's $1 billion business. And so there's going to be some games. I don't know why people are even wringing their hands about it. It's just each league has decided that they're definitely going to follow CDC guidelines. They're definitely going to follow local municipal decisions about how to move from one place to another. But you got a lot of team owners that have their primary business interests getting annihilated by this economy. And so their little toy, their NBA team or their Major League Baseball team or their NFL team in the other respective sports are draining as well. And so there are going to be some hard decisions. The good thing is, here I'm going to give you a rule of thumb. When you're watching teams, particularly in the NBA right now, Utah and Houston, I'm talking to you, that are talking about cutting salaries and furloughing people, That's absolute garbage. These budgets were set back in July for salaries for employees. That budget was set back in July of 2019. So what are you digging in that? How bad is your business? How bad are your books if you were trying to drain your staff in anticipation of what's coming? Now, you get into May and June and you're budgeting for 2021 and you need to make some decisions. I get that. We lost, 7 home games a team. That's legitimate money. Probably on average, a team probably nets $1 million. There's teams that do far better and some teams that don't do so well. So somewhere about $1.2 million a home game. That's real money, and that's going to impact budgets. And the NBA had a issue with the Chinese government to start off the season by comments that were made by Houston brass. And about $250 million got lost because of that war of the words. And so there's been some business impact that the NBA was going to have to deal with anyway coming into all of this.
It's funny bringing up the issue with the Chinese government. So now we have an even bigger issue with the Chinese government, right?
Well, I mean, it's the biggest one, right? I mean,
exactly.
But that's relationships, right? So we're told one thing about how great the relationship is at the highest levels. And then when the rubber meets the road, it's clear that the relationships are what they have been, that is a closed totalitarian society, a dictatorship. And they will decide also the information that they're going to disseminate. That's why you have intelligence. That's why you have counterintelligence. That's why you do not understaff your government. And we're learning more and more that all these things that everybody thought was really awesome about slicing and dicing, let me drain the swamp and all, there's a bureaucracy in place most of the time for these times. We saw it in Katrina. We're seeing it now. Don't play with it. Understand, have smart people do jobs that you may not find all that important every single day. But when you need to knock on that door, ring that bell, you hope and wish that somebody's there.
Absolutely true. Now, getting back to the NBA, are they able to get testing done for these players? Because obviously they're not going to be able to have the players together and play the game and be touching each other on the court without knowing that they are negative for COVID-19.
Yeah, and there was a lot of pushback, and players got, I think, undeserved criticism, teams in the league, for getting testing done. But if you remember back to the fiasco that was that night in Salt Lake City with the OKC crew in town, and what had to happen, I mean, they had to lock down the facility. They had to keep everybody in there for hours and find out. And it wasn't like this rollout of, hey, let's willy-nilly test these folks. We have somebody with symptoms being around all these people. They almost went out on the court. We have to test these people. Now, well, what about the people in the arena? The people in the arena aren't even 20 feet from the floor and the players. And when we talk about the players that were showing symptoms, and then there were some guys that were asymptomatic but still had the virus, that's not something that you play with. And then from there, it was the teams that were in contact were then testing their entire team because they had been in spaces where some of these players that tested positive for the virus had been. So it wasn't this willy-nilly, rich guys get what they want all the time type thing. It was very much along the lines of what all of us were living by for testing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm not naive, or act like I'm naive. I'm not. I know that when you have some dough, you can make some things move, and relationships help too. But the entire society, from sea to shining sea, has been and sadly remains woefully under the space we should be in as it pertains to testing. If you're going to go play baseball, if you're going to play an NFL season, if you're going to play an NBA season, then you have to find out who is positive and who is not and begin a quarantine in that space alone before you even get everybody out onto the field of play. So it is a process that will require testing.
Absolutely. And let's talk about just even going to a game and watching a game and how this is going to have an effect on people. Are they going to want to go to an arena? Are they going to want to be around in public places and watching games? So where do you see that going? There
will be some trepidation, and then there'll be some glee, right? There are going to be some people that are like, getting to the blocks like they're in a track meet to get to the next game, because that's just what they do. That's their diversion. That's how they balance their life. I don't think sports are the most important thing, but I know it's important. If you work a 9 to 5 all day, or if you own your own business, or you're in a tough relationship, you need a diversion. You need something else. And people oftentimes turn to their favorite sports team for that. And I take that responsibility seriously. There will be, I know how the human nature works. There will be people that change the entire way they operate. We'll get the all clear. They'll still have their masks and gloves on, and they'll still scrub their space down. That's who they are. They were going to be that way anyway. They're reactive and impacted by massive things, and have a level of anxiety that's not going to be appeased by a state or government official, federal official, stepping to a microphone going, "Hey, life's okay." They're just going to live this way because they've been traumatized. Those people, please tune in to Fox Sports Sun and enjoy the game. I'm with you on that. You still can tune in and check me out.
Absolutely. And I have a feeling the NBA will capitalize on that even. Maybe we will start seeing branded masks that they'll be selling in the stadium with the team's logo on them. You never know.
Or giving them away, like the Miami Heat. So the Miami Heat paired with one of these companies that took our jerseys that we don't have those players anymore, and turned them into masks for free of charge.
I love that.
But we paid for it, but I was saying free of charge to the medical professionals that were receiving the masks that were constructed with old Miami Heat jerseys.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's so great. Have you talked to Mickey Arison?
His son Nick is our chief executive officer, and he's given mandate to our executive management to make sure we remain engaged. Obviously, the great things that the Arison family provided financially as it pertains to our part-time and game day workers, creating $1 million fund just to get that going. And then the Feed America, which connects directly into our community, contribution of over $200,000. I mean, listen, you got folks putting people on furlough and putting them on the street from their jobs, and the Arisons are doing what they do. Basketball is one of their businesses, but Miami is their home, and they're always taking care of home. So taking care of employees that get paid by game, taking care of people that aren't eating because they don't have the proper income at this particular point. What greater stewards of a community are there? I don't know.
They're great people. And, for you, beyond you just being a broadcaster, you're a person that works very hard, works a very long season. Now you've been at home now for, 3+ weeks. What is it like for you? What are you doing?
Well, I do have these long off seasons. I am used to being off for 3 to 6 months, depending upon our playoff success. But also in me being off is a run to the cigar bar, to Tomorrowland, to Calle, right? You know what I'm saying? To Sweet Caroline's, hang out with our friend Jennifer Nolan Jones. I am a social being. I've been accused since 6 years old of being a social butterfly. And so with that being said, this isn't simple, but it is required of us. And so I try to keep my behind right here at my boutique condo location in Coral Gables. I move through the roof and maybe down to the CVS and over to Publix. And I cook every dinner for my family and without fail through this particular process. Try to commune with friends at a distance and adhere to the things that are being asked of us. And that's the one thing that people need to realize. There's too many people still on the street for my liking. If you're not essential, all right, essential is first responder, medical professional, engineers that keep these buildings moving. If you're not those people, stop going to Home Depot to return your light bulbs. All right, like that. Stop doing it. Like that, you're not helping.
It's pretty difficult for us that are social, right? And there's things out there to remain social. You have the phones, you have the electronics. Thank God we live in a time where we have those things. And when you look back to history of humankind and you think about other situations like this in the past, they didn't have these forms of communication. So we actually don't really have that much to complain about.
No, this particular episode of the Channe Show would begin with, I believe, ink and quill. My dearest Kavita, I hope that the fortnight has treated you well. Exactly. Come on, dissolve to the candlelight.
When you think that we're going to be able to go out in the public and have this lockdown be lifted?
The really smart kids in Britain that put together the report for the prime minister before he got sick, and bless his soul, hopefully things turn in the right direction for Boris Johnson. They were, I think, on point. They discussed the difference between mitigation and suppression. Mitigation, in the sense of how we move and operate and deal with people, is probably difficult to sustain, and suppression is critical, but even harder to sustain than mitigation. There's one thing that makes this all okay: a vaccine. And the schedule of a vaccine is anywhere between 18 and 24 months before it actually gets into our veins, right? Now you have commerce driving the production of a vaccine. And so we're going to get it quicker than that. So know that. But I would be surprised if that's 9 months. And so if you believe, like I do, that the only real, the real green light in all of this is a vaccine that's available to all of us, then we're somewhere between 9 and 18 months until life is back to some semblance of how we knew it. I'm not crazy enough to believe that everybody will use that timeline, nor should we be publicly talking about that type of timeline, because people then start acting crazy. And I think that's why we work in these 2 to 4 week increments, because human nature is to survive. That's the baseline of human nature, to survive. The second we believe that our survival is in jeopardy, we act like idiots. And so I think it's wise to speak in those terms, and that those of us who have big heads that can't fit in a hat, we can process, more time and realize what is what. But can you then take the 450 players in our league, I'll just speak about our league, get them into a space, sequestered for 2 weeks, make sure that everybody's on the up and up, then play games in a remote location with no fans? Absolutely. How do you go about that and move those things around when you're just trying to stay out of the way of essential travel? I think we're a ways away from that, and that's why the league has given itself, again, as we've talked about before, as we tape this, 3 more weeks to make that decision. What we're starting to see, though, that I think is lovely and leans in the direction of everything starting to get to the place where we're seeing the other half of the world now, is you want to start seeing the percentage of those people that are testing positive, and the number, the hard total number of people that are sadly leaving us because of the extrapolation into the respiratory disease, COVID-19. You want those numbers to continue to decline on a daily basis, and then you feel like you're moved to the other side of the mountain. Then you can start to consider how much of these restraints that are going to come off. Then you can start to consider if you're going to play some sort of regular season, if at all, and move into the postseason.
Thank you so much, Jax.
An absolute pleasure. Have me back.
We'll talk to you soon.
You got it.
Make sure to stay tuned for our next episode and subscribe to my YouTube channel.